I don't know what Tim Walz's real opinions are, but it's obvious to me that that's not something that he is like fully on board with. He's having a hard time, or even if he is fully on board with it, he's having a hard time communicating that. Okay. JD Vance immediately jumped on and gave a summarization of the Hillbilly Elegy because he understood that like this is his opportunity to basically describe his background to as broad of an audience as possible.
Governor Tim Walz and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance taking the stage at the sole vice presidential debate hosted by CBS.
So right off the jump, I have a lot of thoughts on the debate, okay? Many people want to hear what my like immediate approach was or what my overall understanding of the debate was, okay? And it was soul-sucking. I hated it, okay? I hated it for a bunch of different reasons. Number one, it ended up presenting J.D. Vance like a normal human being, which is really up. Okay, you ran an ad 10 minutes ago, loser. Okay, just you know, let's get people to shut up a little bit. I'm just gonna ban a bunch of people today. I think I'm in a bad fucking mood. It made J.D. Vance look moderate. J.D. Vance came on that stage with one goal and one goal only. It wasn't even to like defend Trump that much. Obviously, he still has to do that because like, you know, he has an audience of one. But his major goal tonight was, or last night, was to basically present himself as like a moderate person, a solid communicator that has a liberal veneer on some very illiberal and very, very right-wing ideologies. And he did a good job at that. I hate to recognize that. I think that is devastating. I think that is a bad thing. But I do think he did a pretty solid job. And his approval rating post-debate went up as a consequence of that. It was also very frustrating because Tim Walz is a normal guy. He is not this like machine politician overall. And because of that, he's kind of weak when it comes to defending certain machine politician requirements. And the debate starting off with, would you allow Israel to first strike Iran, definitely knocked the wind out of his sails. Okay? It did. It started off real rough because I don't think, like, I'm not being parasocial or anything. Like, do I think that Tim Walz is like someone who is invested in the continuation of the Israeli or the Palestinian population? Yes. Okay. I do. I don't think he cares. But I also personally think that his heart is not in it in the same way that like other politicians may be. You know, get a guy like Brian Mast up there to talk about it. He'll chirp till the cows come home about how awesome it is that Palestinian children need to be melted, right? He is not necessarily the guy who is all that invested. And you saw it. You saw it because there were issues that he was genuinely invested in. And he popped off when talking about it. So the first half definitely went to J.D. Vance on that front. Because a lot of these questions and a lot of these issues, okay, a lot of these issues were issues that machine politicians are equipped to talk about, right? J.D. Vance is a very cunning, wily little rat in a human suit, okay? He's a lizard person in a human suit. He can communicate with podcasters about incel groypers, but he can also shift his, he can shift his language to an audience that is predominantly liberal. He can moderate himself, right? That's just the truth. He is like Pete Buttigieg. But Pete Buttigieg has, I would say, more charisma even than J.D. Vance. Now, overall, I was frustrated with the way in which Tim Walz announced himself to the most prominent, to the largest possible platform he could have announced himself to. What do I mean by this? This is the biggest audience he's going to be in front of, okay? I wished that he would have been able to communicate his desires and communicate his opinions in the same exact ways that he was able to do so when talking about lowering pharma prices, lowering housing costs. Like, you saw how passionate he would get on issues that he cares about. Healthcare is another one. He's very good on those issues. I hated how much they agreed, though, because Tim Walz is like a normal guy, okay? He's a yokel. That is his appeal. And as a yokel, normal guy, and not like a real politician in the way that you understand it, okay? He's not going to come across as solid on American foreign policy, and he definitely did not come across as solid on immigration. I would say that the reason for why this was a 50-50 deadlock in most of the polls that came out afterwards, with some independents favoring Tim Walz over J.D. Vance, is because of the platform that these two parties represent. Not on immigration specifically, but on how hard J.D. Vance goes on immigration, how hard the right-wing platform goes on immigration, and how normal Tim Walz can present himself to a broader audience in comparison to J.D. Vance, who is very good at, masquerading as like a moderate if he wants to, but he still has this like nervous energy, otherwise disgusted by. So Tim Walz standing next to him, and what do I mean by this? J.D. Vance is an unlikable psychopath. So when you got a likable yokel like Tim Walz being like, I agree with you, behaving like a kindergarten teacher, okay, and J.D. Vance is like the bad behaving child or whatever, you're going to make him look good. And that's precisely what happened. He had more to gain than Tim Walz did in this situation, okay? But yeah, right off the jump, the first question was whether either vice president would allow Israel to first strike Iran. We are a ridiculous nation, okay? That was my initial assessment, okay? It was very frustrating to watch that. Like, Israel is doing South Africa speed runs right now, okay? Like, opening up new fronts. They're in apartheid on a good day. They're doing it on a bad day every day. And on top of that, they're, like, busy opening up multiple fronts. And the first question is, like, America's not reining Israel in at all. The media analysis is, will you let Israel unfold? Will you let Israel create a nuclear holocaust? That's crazy. That's a crazy way to interpret the events that are unfolding in front of our eyes. So I knew that there was going to be a uniparty assessment there. But overall, like, I don't know what Tim Walz's real opinions are, but it's obvious to me that that's not something that he is like fully on board with. He's having a hard time, or even if he is fully on board with it, he's having a hard time communicating that. Okay. J.D. Vance immediately jumped on and gave a summarization of the hillbilly elegy, because he understood that, like, this is his opportunity to basically describe his background to as broad of an audience as possible, even though everybody hates him. Okay. And the worst aspect of it early on, and this is like something I locked into pretty quickly, was that J.D. Vance also did a much better job than Trump when it comes to lying about bringing end to global conflict. Okay? Like, I often talk about 2016 era Trump, how he was able to successfully present himself as a peaceful dove, right, against Hillary Clinton's warmongering tendencies. 2024 Trump, on the other hand, hasn't done that well. He has definitely lost his step a little bit. J.D. Vance, on the other hand, in my opinion, did a better job of communicating, not just on this front, but on a lot of the key Republican conversations. And the media reception on that, with the exception of January 6th, was showcasing exactly what I'm saying. Okay? Like, J.D. Vance was able to communicate Trump's insane policies, whether it be on immigration or beyond Trump's insane policies on immigration, like the hard things to talk about, like abortion. He is able to moderate that even better. He's like, oh, we got to do better with women. Like, we got to do better at listening to women. Like, he is such a classic former liberal that he knows exactly how to tap into that. And I think that played well to at least the media class. Okay. And he has a lot more experience in this field, both as like a Yale guy and also as a guy who was a liberal. He was a liberal. He was a liberal until not that long ago. But yeah, another aspect of this also is that it's wild that Tim Walz's entire shtick, I said, is that he's a normal, not a real politician kind of guy. His answer about defending the apartheid regime right to start World War III is textbook soulless, amoral politician. And he's not going to be good at that. He's just not. He can't do that. And the other thing that I had called out ahead of time, ahead of the debate, was that he was always going to be, and Tim Walz is who I'm talking about here. He was always going to be on crutches, you know? He was always going to have training weights on because he has to defend Kamala Harris's policy because she's leading the ticket. Okay? That's it. And when you have those training weights on and you're sitting there defending, the right-wing border bill, if you don't have your own way of communicating that right-wing border bill, then you're going to have to use their talking points. And that's why it was Kamala Bot 2.0. He literally kept repeating the same exact lines. That's bad coaching, okay? That's bad coaching. That's just straight up like they know what kind of potential they have with Tim Walz. That's why they chose him, right? So why the fuck are you telling him to just reiterate Kamala Harris's position that she keeps repeating over and over again? It's very bad. It was very bad rhetoric, okay? He literally said she prosecuted transnational gangs. Like, you don't have to use her points, dude. You don't have to use her talking points. Be yourself. Anyway, JD Vance said 1 million undocumented immigrants have committed some kind of on U.S. soil as he walks through how he'd deport 25 million migrants. It was very frustrating. Obviously, he was able to, once again, repeat his positions on immigrants without coming across as insane as Donald Trump. Okay, that's another area where, like, JD Vance, in my opinion, did a more professional, like he was able to add a professional veneer to the deeply right-wing, deeply white nativist immigration, anti-immigrant sentiments. Okay, he didn't have like any moments like the ones that you've heard him on those podcasts about, like coming across as weird about like having a breeding fetish for women. Okay, treating women as like, cows basically, or saying that like he's lying about immigrant stories because he wants to hyper focus on like taking away the TPS status of like Haitian migrants that are living on U.S. soil. Like, the policies are weird, but he wasn't showcasing it in a weird way. He didn't communicate it in a way where, like, I think the average onlooker would look at that and go, dude, what the like, this guy's out of his mind. Donald Trump failed on that front. Okay. And part of that, part of the reason why JD Vance was able to successfully communicate this is because Democrats don't address some of the very basic lies that the Republican Party tells on a regular basis. They're locked in on a right-wing border attitude. They're just completely committed to it. And it's very, very frustrating. It's very frustrating to see that. This is another thing that I've been yelling about for months. Okay? For months and months, I have been screaming. Since October 4 or October 5, I think, before October 7, when Joe Biden came out and unveiled his right-wing border bill, that he got like an incredibly conservative Republican senator from Oklahoma to write, that he was committed to. Ever since the Democrats rolled out their anti-immigrant proposals, I've been yelling about how you cannot outflank the Republicans on this issue. You cannot cave and capitulate and concede to right-wing framing on this issue. And they absolutely have. And they are not going to change trajectory on this. And I despise them for doing that, because even if it actually helped them win the election, then ultimately you're still passing a right-wing border bill. Like, you're still hurting the future of this country. You're still bouldering towards, but now with a D sticker slapped onto it, it's completely, patently unacceptable. Okay? But the other side of this is that it also doesn't even help the Democrats. I'm losing my mind. The Dems never mentioned that it's U.S. citizens trafficking the drugs across the border. It's literally 80% of the drug apprehensions, and yet that never gets brought up. Never. If you ask most Americans, average Americans, who are maybe a little bit more thoughtful about the situation, most of them think drug mules, children, JD Vance said children make the best drug mules, by the way. Like, these people, most people actually legitimately think that it's immigrants that are bringing the drugs into the country. It's just not true. It is incorrect. And it blows my mind that we don't ever discuss the reality of the situation. Okay? Ryan Marino quote tweeted me and said 88% of fentanyl trafficking convictions across the southern border are U.S. citizens. 0.02% of people crossing illegally possess fentanyl. That's what every single law enforcement agency says, and the data is public. And I can't see how increasing money to the border will help prevent any drug overdoses when CBP are the ones smuggling the rest of the drugs into the country. Yeah. It's so weird. I mean, it's not like it's I don't think this is incompetence. I don't think this is like negligence. I think it is because the Democrats have also decided they are going to be right wing on the border going forward forever. Like, I think that they're just locked in on it. I think it's on purpose. It's very up. And I do think it's deliberate. Tim Walz is defending a right-wing border bill that literally has funding for Trump's border wall in it. I hate this party so much. They're in agreement on the made-up issue that migrants constitute a national security threat. Dems just want to be lame about the optics. Yeah, once again, Democrats find themselves in the realm of bad politics and bad policy. It's bad politics because you can never outflank the right on anti-immigrant sentiment, because this sentiment is not coming from a logical place. It's coming from pure, that's it. It's pure white supremacist attitudes, right? So you can't really outflank them by being like, well, hold on now. We got to logically do this situation. It's like, it's illogical. It's illogical because immigrants do not constitute a national security threat. They are literally not a burden, but a boon on American economy. And also beyond that, they literally do less. They do less per capita than natural-born U.S. citizens. It's so stupid. So just say the truth. Say the truth. It me that this is something that they've just completely dropped. And there is polling to show that the overall American sentiment, the overarching American sentiment towards migration patterns, towards immigrants in general, was objectively positive, significantly more positive when the Democrats were actually hammering against Trump's right-wing, white nativist border bill and border policies. Okay? But they completely dropped that early on. They changed trajectory. They went right-wing immediately. The truth is not what their target demo voter want to hear. That's not true. Their target demo voters will literally change their minds if they hear the truth from someone. But if no one is saying the truth on either side, then yeah, lies are going to lead this conversation. And it's bad politics and it's bad policy because it's like you're going to harm the US economy and you're going to harm a ton of people in the process by, implementing or allowing anti-immigrant sentiment to fester. That's why we have the bomb threats in Springfield, Ohio, because that's what happens when people do legitimately believe that like undocumented and documented immigrants like the Haitians that have TPS are rapist cat eaters, brother. That's it. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to have pogroms. That's it. It's already happening and Trump's not even president yet. I don't know, man. I think you're a prime example that people don't want to hear the truth. What do you mean? Me saying this is entirely different than one of the two parties effectively communicating this, because when I say it, it doesn't move the needle. When I say it, NBC, CNN, ABC is not going to cover it, okay? But when Kamala Harris says it, they will cover it. And I think the Democrats' expectation is that like the media will make up for that. The media will make up for that misinformation when they won't. They won't do it. Polls say most Americans, you had 100K people in here only to listen to debate coverage, but you spend every day talking and doing actual work. The general public does not care. Polls say most Americans support mass deportation is good politics, to be honest. Yeah, those very same polls also literally show that Americans also want amnesty. They literally have 90% approval rating for giving dreamers American citizenship. How do you make sense of those polls? It doesn't fucking matter. Americans, for the most part, do not see how bad a policy is until it's in effect. That's why under the Trump administration, when Trump actually was implementing right-wing border policies, Americans were very much against that. Joe Biden ran against that. Joe Biden was far closer on the issue of immigration to Donald Trump and even beat him on certain polls when he was running against Trump's border policies. They're catering to the centrist voters in swing states. No, dumbass. They're telling you that. Okay? They're telling you that, and you're just repeating that without critically thinking about the issue. I'm over here trying to explain to you that this is a ridiculous thing, that this is a stupid thing to do. All you're doing is telling your base of voters that undocumented migrants constitute a national security threat. When the Democrats say Republicans are right on immigration, that we have to do something about it, all they've done is legitimize their perspective. Their perspective is not born out of data. Their perspective is not born out of the truth. All you've done is make your base of support, your voters who trust you, who believe you when you say, yeah, immigrants do constitute a national security threat. We got to do something about it. That's all you've done. You have made the entirety now of the broader electorate turn right wing on immigration. That's it. Also, the idea that Democrats like listen to polls when it suits their broader purpose is so stupid when it comes to Israel. Okay, there is overwhelming support for pushing for a ceasefire. There is even overwhelming support for denying transfers as a way to push Israel to do a ceasefire. Democrats don't listen to that. Democrats might lose Michigan for this reason. So obviously they don't give up about the polls when it's something that they care about, okay? When it's an issue that they care more about. They care more about continuing American foreign policy that is set in stone instead of actually doing something that is electorally beneficial. Dems winning elections, stopping deportation is good. It's pragmatic. No, it's not. You are just repeating things that you read and things that you saw on MSNBC without applying any kind of critical thinking to this process whatsoever. Okay? You are literally the living definitional proof that Democrats catering to this like right-wing framing ends up making dumbasses like you who are lifelong liberals also repeat the same Republican. You are what I'm talking about. You are the perfect example. If you were around in 2020, you said you've been following since 2019. I suspect that there was a certain point, if you were in the chat all the way back in 2020, where you were chirping about Donald Trump's insane right-wing policies in terms of the border bills that he pushed for. What changed? What changed? The Democrats started also assuming a right-wing attitude on the border, so now you're also assuming a right-wing attitude. That's it. That's the issue. 100% a Redditor, yes. Use the page up key on the keyboard. I mean, I'm scrolling it. I think it's like not very effective. Anyway, not very long ago, Dems were making fun of the border wall. Yeah, exactly. Bro, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have like on the record statements about how stupid it is to fund a border wall and that like that's not going to prevent any. It's true. Okay, god damn, this chatter talks so much. Holy. Anyway, no timeouts though. Good chatter. I know. Shockingly little timeouts from this person. Like he's like a Bernie bro, I think. No border is easy in 2021. Border copium. Wall. Look. Borders. No nationalism. Border Patrol. How the fuck did you go from someone who was like making fun of dengists to a person who's like, I think Kamala Harris is actually doing the right thing in terms of her analysis, looking for, yeah, look. 2021. Dems are better to black people and trans people and immigrants. Read Marx. Chatter went from read Marx and Democrats are better to black people and trans people and immigrants to like, actually, Democrats have to be mean to immigrants in order to win elections. How'd that happen? You went from saying bourgeois democracy to being a willing participant of it. How did that happen? I'm a leftist, bro. I get the logic. I'm a leftist. I'm telling you their logic. Sorry, Omegalol. Their logic is stupid. And if you're a leftist, you should understand that that is stupid. My point is you, okay? The Democrats behaving like this creates this weird media cycle where people literally end up repeating those talking points as though it's actually a brilliant tactic when it's not. It's just not. And it's funny because Democrats have done this over and over and over again. They've done it on funding the police. Nobody thinks that the Democrats are the fund the police party, okay? It's not going to happen. But they do it anyway. Liberals posting like 2016 Republicans, yeah. At the border with swagger. Sick, man. Sick. It's very, very, very frustrating to see this. Okay. I started listening to books about socialism today. Thanks for teaching me out. Yeah, good stuff. Anyway, there it is. This is the other side of this, okay? The Democratic Party did not really fight this trend. That is bad enough. More worrying to me is that I do not think it would have mattered if it tried. Public opinion doesn't work that way. I don't agree with this as argumentum. Anti-immigrant views went up during the first few years of the Biden's term when crossings were super elevated, but the numbers were right in line with pre-Trump attitudes. It's only been since the Dems surrendered this year that we've seen crazy shifts. Look at that. Look at Americans' preference for migration. Americans' preferences for migration, for immigration to the U.S. Thinking now about immigrants, that is, people who come from other countries to live here in the United States. In your view, should immigration be kept at its present level, increased, or decreased? 55% now say decreased, dude. Look at that massive spike on that football right there. Parties are limited, yes, but they aren't powerless. They have the capacity to shape circumstances in which they exist. That's exactly what Democrats have done here. It's not just in the way that anyone should want. There's zero pushback, so what are people supposed to think? Vance even blamed immigrants for smuggling guns in the U.S., which is the exact opposite of how the gun trafficking works. And no one said a thing. You can blame everything on immigrants now to complete silence. And the more the Democrats actually give their Republicans ample ground to elevate the status, like the danger that immigrants present, the worse things are going to get for immigrants. Okay? It's crazy. What are people supposed to think? If both parties are saying it, then it must be true. Why would you think otherwise? And of course, the average American that doesn't have the capacity to think for themselves or seek out this data is going to go, sorry, I don't trust you. I trust the experts. And the experts keep either staying quiet when the anti-border sentiment is expressed by the Republican Party, or directly contributing to that with right-wing border bills that they are trying to push for. It is very bad if the Democratic Party's proposition is, Morgan is here. It's very bad if the Democratic Party's proposition is, we are going to be the real border protectors, okay? That's very bad. That's very bad for the future of America, because you will never be able to successfully outflank Republicans on patriotism. You will never be able to successfully outflank Republicans on militarism. You will never be able to successfully outflank Republicans on... And most of this is also still coming from the underlying notion of white supremacist attitudes. Anyway, it's not a logical conclusion that they've arrived at. It is born not out of empirical evidence, but instead born out of pure right-wing mania. Okay, and here it is, and you saw that anyway. You saw that distinction for Tim Walz's own performance when he was talking about kitchen table issues like lowering the cost of medication or housing. He cracked on that. Okay, he was popping off on that. Dude, while we agree with your views on immigration, swing state voters in Georgia, PA, Michigan, North Carolina, and dude, you're wrong. Okay, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're just wrong on this issue. Okay, because if the Democratic Party hadn't capitulated to right-wing framing on the matter, they literally would not be in this circumstance to begin with. But beyond that, every single time they capitulate to right-wing framing on the border, they are, one, losing potential voters that are younger, losing potential voters that are Latino, younger Latino voters, specifically in key states, not those states that you mentioned, but in other states. And beyond that, okay, there are plenty of, like, whenever you say that immigrants constitute a national security threat, you are simply, to all of those swing state voters, what you're telling them is that Trump is right, that we do need to build a border wall. Trump is so right that now Kamala Harris wants to build a border wall. And I kept explaining this to you guys over and over again. Okay, if the Republican Party tomorrow came out and said that they're pro-Medicare for all, okay, you wouldn't vote for them. You would vote for the Democrats who would also adopt that position. You'd be like, well, at least I know I trust Democrats more with healthcare than I do with the Republicans. Why the fuck would I ever trust the Republican to pass a progressive bill on Medicare? That's it. I'll give you another example. Do you trust Donald Trump on abortion? He has moderated his position on abortion. Do you trust him? No. So shut the up. All that does is make people understand, yeah, no, abortion is a major problem for the Republican Party. It's very obvious. That's it. That's it. But people don't understand it. Like, they just don't get it. Anyway, JD Vance is saying he got groomed into thinking Trump was Hitler as a 35-year-old Yale graduate man. That's one of my favorite moments of JD Vance, where he's like, I actually also thought Trump was Hitler because the media duped me. I'm stupid, and I no longer think that anymore. You're an idiot, okay? You're an idiot. And there were plenty of missed opportunities. David Dane also correctly pointed this out. Missed opportunity by Walz to mention that Vance's own portfolio company shipped jobs overseas. There were plenty of instances where he could have hammered JD Vance as like a liberal elitist. Okay. That's the other thing. JD Vance is a serial liar. He lied about making up stories. He lied about the patients eating pets. But I hated that they agreed on so much. And then also there was that flub where Tim Walz said he has become friends with school shooters, which I thought was a, funny little moment. Obviously, he's like very nervous. That much is clear. Okay. And that JD Vance reiterated his commitment to being Adolf Hitler over and over and over again.
You got to see me. These folks know me. I'm super passionate about this. The question come up about school shooting. We're talking about everything except school shootings. And I sat as a member of Congress with the Sandy Hook parents, and it was a profound movement. David Hogg is a good friend of mine. You have seen me do this. I was talking about being people where there are school shooters, and I need to be more specific on that, but I am passionate about this. This one, for my wife and I, is just, as teachers, as parents, is so personal.
Yeah, he is friends with one school shooter after last night. His name is JD Vance. In 2018, I led a relational voter program in Wisconsin. We got 30K Latino voters who wanted immigration reform. We got Tony Evers elected and helped Trump out of office in 2020. This year, I've talked to voters with immigrant parents who are parroting liberal talking points. It's infuriating to see the Dems just not correct the narrative on immigration. Yeah. Oh, don't worry. They rely heavily on the Latino voters in Nevada. Okay. The entire culinary union is currently out door knocking for the Kamala Harris campaign. They know they need Latino voters. It's just ironic because they're literally activating Latino voters, some of which come from undocumented backgrounds or have undocumented relatives on U.S. soil. They're literally getting the door knock for a campaign that is going to, work on deporting them. Anyway, but yeah, it was a tactical L, in my opinion, in my estimation, where Tim Walz did not hammer JD Vance at all. And obviously, a lot of dummies love that the civility, right? They loved how civil the conversation was. That's not good. That means you love the conversation between JD Vance and Tim Walz. A much better alternative here would at the very least be daggering JD Vance a couple times and separating himself from the moderate position that he was actually presenting himself as on the largest stage that he's been on so far. Tim Walz is already well liked. JD Vance is not. JD Vance basically did a fantastic job of advocating for JD Vance. Why can't Vance or Harris simply say that the people who have harmed the working class, Americans are rapacious billionaires? I think he means Tim Walz or Harris. Are rapacious billionaires like Trump and Peter Thiel, not immigrants who work themselves to the bone trying to give their kids a better life. There's another aspect of this that I'm very frustrated by. Like, Americans love anecdotes, okay? Americans love anecdotes. We're not very intelligent as a collective. And one thing you got to do in that situation is rely on the anecdotes. Republicans do it all the time when they present this like hyper specific, hyper emotional argument about like how rapist the migrants are, the migrant population is. They point to like a literal handful of instances where migrants have done these kinds of heinous, okay, to make it seem like the entire migrant population is engaging in it. And it's very frustrating that the Democrats don't do that. I rarely ever hear from the Democrats about emotional anecdotes. They do it for abortion, and they're very good at it for abortion, okay? But they never do it for someone who has lost their house. They never do it for someone who is on the throes of homelessness as a consequence of being priced out of the market. They never do it for a migrant. They never do it for a migrant worker to humanize these people. Go talk to the United Fruit Workers or something. Like, what are you talking about? They never do that. There is never any real stories about how these guys are your neighbors, man. You're on your goddamn neighbors. You're on normal people who are just like you. And the Republican Party does this every day. It's very frustrating. Anyway, another thing I said was Tim Walz convinced me that Minnesota is slightly better than most other places in the nation. Don't know what this means for the national race. Yeah, Tim Walz made the most effective argument, putting Minnesota on the map in a big way. I will say that. Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Haven't been able to decide, but he certainly did do a good job with that. You know, I am now a firm believer that, you know, Minnesota is a great place to go live at. Ilhan Omar replied to me there as well. She said, it is. Okay. So that was cool. Where else? What else were we going to do? I can't believe Vance literally used Walz's civility and normalcy as a way to draft his public image in a positive and normal light because Walz isn't comfortable with opposing his opponent. I know. Tim Walz has that same Bernie Sanders where he's just too much of a nice guy. He was so goddamn nice. I mean, at a certain point, I was like, he's behaving like a goddamn Canadian. Okay. Your reaction to it was the best.
Yeah, I sat in that office with those San Diego parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, they used to teach gun safety.
No! He's just like, he's too Minnesotan. He's too Canadian coded. He's too Canadian adjacent. Like, he's just too nice. Stop being so nice, dude. Anyway, but yeah, one of my final statements on the debate was basically that if Dems are going to be this pro-Israel and neuter whatever progressive momentum they would have gotten with the Walz pick, they should have just went with Josh Shapiro. Josh Shapiro, at the very least, would have locked down Pennsylvania for them, and he would have been a more effective communicator. And I'm being honest about this. Josh Shapiro would have been a more effective communicator of Kamala Harris's dog policies, especially on the border and especially on Israel too. And beyond that, he would have done a better job defending. He would have done a better job defending all of like Kamala Harris's policies that like Tim Walz doesn't do a good job defending on, and he would have done a better job against JD Vance as well. Anyway, but yeah, that's what we got. So let's hear what the media analysis is on the matter.
Events still unfolding and uncertain too sparred over who offers stronger leadership at this critical moment.
Our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before.
In a presidential campaign that has been anything but civil, this was a strikingly civil and substantive debate.
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate. And I think
the media loves this. The media loves like, oh, look at how civil they were. And it was so substantive. They talked about policies. That only helps JD Vance. Straight up. That does not help the ticket for Kamala Harris at all. A substantive civil debate is not helping Tim Walz. Make no mistake. It only makes JD Vance look like a moderate. That's why I'm so frustrated with the debate and the outcome of the debate.
there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one.
It wasn't until 90 minutes into the debate that the contentious topic of the last election came up.
I would just ask that.
You want to know why? You want to know why that's dangerous? Because here, I'll give you a great example. Okay, my normie friends literally said, these guys are so normal. Why can't they be the ones running? Okay. Do you want to know how devastating that is for Trump's policy, which JD Vance is communicating? That means JD Vance, as I said to you, conducted himself in such a moderate way that people forgot that he was actually speaking on Trump's policies. Okay. JD Vance was able to successfully communicate to a broad subset of American voters that Trump's policies are actually normal and maybe even good, because Americans are so aesthetic focused. You have to understand, when someone communicates in a very civil manner, okay, when he doesn't do the, oh, they're here? Okay, perfect. Here, Not outside, but okay. You need to understand, this is bad. This is really bad. If you hate the Republicans for their policies, this is really bad, okay? If you even hate the Republicans for aesthetic reasons, this is still bad because this makes Republicans look normal. You don't want them to look normal. You don't want their Nazi-ass attitude to be normal, ever, okay? Anyway.
Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
Vance insisted it is Democrats who are the biggest threat to democracy.
Kamala Harris wants to use government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment.
A president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power.
In the first part of the debate, Governor Walz seemed nervous. He had trouble answering a question about whether or not he was in China during the Tiananmen Square uprising.
My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good